Fragments of Silicon, beaming you back to the past, sometimes. All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daylight Interviews. Joining us this week is Oleg Klapovskiy of SNEG.
Sounds about right. Hey, everyone.
Indeed. Right, so how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the studio, the games, and all of that. And we do this by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
That's an interesting question. I think something that is driving almost all of us is being a gamer since early childhood, playing games. Then at the moment, internet cafes appeared, going to them, playing Dooms, Quakes, later on Counter-Strikes, then starting playing Counter-Strike on a professional level, spending lots of time there, probably more playing than actually studying. All these professional tournaments took quite some time. This is when I met majority of my friends, and then we got attention from the games industry. Because again, I was born in Russia. Back to the time, it was somewhere far away from the Western world. Still, we had a few developers, a few distributors and publishers of the games, and they found me. They asked me to make a few tournaments for them, not only for Quake and Counter-Strike, but for their game that was developed by the GSC, Game Worlds team, back at that time. This is how I entered the games industry. Then for a few years I was working as a licensing business development manager, getting in touch with the great Western partners, trying to bring their games to Russian-speaking community in the former USSR space. And that's when I met the creators and founders of CD Projekt Group. Around the early 2008, they convinced me to join them in Poland. First, I was supposed to open Russian offices of CD Projekt Group. So we actually distribute our games there directly. But when I came for the onboarding, that was supposed to be 3 months, and it was 2008. The crisis hit, and instead of opening offices, I think together with the overall management, we were fighting to survive, how to optimize the company, how to ensure it brings profits. And again, that was a tough year because we had to let go quite some people, tens of people. But again, we survived. Probably half a year after supporting them in this hard job, we've agreed that I will take care of GOG. At that time it was called Good Old Games. I moved there and was responsible for growing that business, finding more and more gaming gems to bring to the platform and ensure it grows, develops, gets more and more support from the community, invites more and more gamers. And this is how my story of games preservation started. I think from the person who was acting like as archaeologist, looking for the rights of different games here and there, gathering these rights puzzles, to the person who was managing probably 3/4 of the company, 13 years after. It was a great journey, and it was fantastic. So meeting lots of cool people, developers of the original games, surprising them that actually games industry is still existing and there is interest in their products. Surprisingly, majority of people, especially like individual developers, they didn't believe that there is any interest in those games. And then when they were starting getting royalties, they were super happy. And many of them got back to the industry thanks to it. Also, it was a journey full of fun people. Again, in the pre-show, we discussed that Stephen Keek is telling all the time that when he managed to secure the rights for System Shock, he came to GOG, he dropped an email to us, and he got an answer that, hey, probably you're crazy because we don't believe you. And that's the truth, because I was the person replying to him, and I've asked him to provide me with the proof, because I know who had the rights, and it was in exactly insurance company. And I talked to those guys 2 years prior to Steven, but at that time they told me it will never happen. They will not sell these rights to anyone. So when Steven said, hey, I managed to secure it, I was like, hey, man, I don't believe you. But then indeed he shared all the proofs, and indeed he approached those guys at the right moment of time when they were ready. And thanks to Steven, we managed to bring this game and IP back to community. So that's when Steven's adventure started.
Indeed.
And it was cool to observe it from the outside because, again, I was generally handling development of the platform and ensuring that we have more and more classics appearing there, while Steven was doing similar job, but more on the dev side. So he had to find all games, ensure that they are working, and bringing them not only to GOG, but also to Steam. And later on, again, how he progressed. It's a great inspiration, I think, for many gaming fans. Across the time, again, I did lots of different things, not only taking care of GOG, but also managed to spend some time on the board of CD Projekt Red, taking care of its online development. So I don't know if you know Gwent. So I was supervising this part. Also took care of Thronebreaker, which was like standalone product in the Witcher universe. Probably not so many people are even aware of its existence, but yes, we made this experiment as well. And then after 13 years being in the group, we've agreed that it's better for us to split because I had my own vision for certain things. Board had another vision. And at the same time, I've realized that I'm tired of just managing people, managing processes, managing businesses, and what I was missing also is like digging into all these gaming rights because that's where I had probably the biggest amount of fun. Checking who has the rights, talking to people, trying to understand who did what at what point of time, where the rights split, and generally having fun in ensuring that games I was playing back to my childhood, back to people, they can enjoy them again. They can play them. Not even mentioning that I still have lots of great games from the past that I want to bring back. And again, it's a game preservation because I think that industry definitely deserves it. We need to know the names of designers who actually were pioneers in this space. Many people know lots of modern indie titles, but I think that probably 1% of gamers know where certain game mechanics are coming from. It's the same thing that everyone believes that JRPGs, they have the roots in Japan because of the name, right? JRPG.
Right.
But not many people know that actually it comes from the West, from the games like fantasy, from wizardry. This is where the majority of the mechanics is coming from. And then obviously through different iterations, we have JRPG genre.
Yeah. Like the JRPG genre was born of three titles: Wizardry, Ultima, and the Black Onyx.
Yes, exactly. And there were games, but that's the fun part because there were games even prior to those ones who already had the majority of these mechanics. For example, there was a series of game called Fantasy, PH Fantasy, and actually we brought it back with the original design recently. It was released prior to Wizardry, and I have a feeling, probably not, nobody knows, but sometimes you have a feeling that Wizardry was partly inspired by this game. Partly. So it's cool to follow the trends and how all these mechanics were developing through different iterations, how different designers, creators, developers were grabbing certain ideas, iterating, and making it better and better and better.
Indeed, it's a archaeology lesson.
Yes, and again, getting back to me, so this is when we split with CD Projekt Group. So this is when I joined a friend of mine in this new endeavor, SNEG. I cannot say that it's super duper impressive business, but we consider it as our passion project, and we're just spending time here just to ensure indeed we preserve games. And if we can make a bit of money out of it later on, one day will be great.
Right.
Again, and in parallel, so it's not like it's a surprise. I was asked to support another game publisher, Polish game publisher called developer called Techland. So for the last 3 years, I'm also fulfilling the role of the chief publishing officer. So I also know something about zombies.
I'd imagine, like, possibly also something about gunslinging.
Yes, but, not so much about zombies, but definitely a good game in the Wild West genre. And actually, it plays quite well on the Switch.
Yeah, that did come out recently. Like, for those who don't know, Techland is also the publishers and creators of the Call of Juarez franchise.
Yes, probably the second biggest Wild West franchise, but again, with a huge difference. Probably second after Red Dead Redemption.
There's not many of them,
Yes,
which is a bit surprising, honestly. Like, but you know, I could not say why there's not too many Wild West games. Anyway, so I suppose a question that does come to mind here is, how did you get started on the publishing journey at GOG in the first place? Like, how did you take that initial breach towards, rescuing games from the void?
Actually, it was a discussion of the founders of CD Projekt Group back at the time. Again, the very, very popular games in Eastern Europe were Baldur's Gate, so all these D&D games. But at a certain point, they disappeared. Totally disappeared from the market. And again, remember, it was less digital world at that time. It was generally retail. So if you wanted to play Baldur's Gate 1, there was no way to do this because no retailers were restocking them. They were not putting them anywhere. And at that time, there was a cool idea. Let's still license it from the original developers, publishers, and create a series of game called Extra Classics. In Polish, it would be Extra Klasika. Nobody believed it will work, but surprisingly, for those great games, it was working. And in terms of Unity, it was selling more than many of modern games at that time. And then looking at the digital world, we decided that, hey, it's a good point to bring these old classics, all these gaming gems to digital world. And Steam was already growing at that time, becoming more and more popular. And those two ideas were just like merged. The idea of the fact that, hey, if you want to play classic, there is no way to get it. And you will not get in retail. So where you can get it in digital. Also, it was the moment when games from 90s or let's say early Windows era, like Windows 3.11 or Windows 95, Windows 98, they stopped working. And that was another issue to tackle, how to ensure that you can still play those games. And all these ideas, they were like merged again, as mentioned, and this is when the Good Old Games platform was born. Originally, there were not so many games there, so there was a deal signed with the Interplay for a few classics, with Codemasters and Revolution Software, and that's it. Nobody else was on board, and this is what we've launched first as a closed beta for a few selected journalists. I think there were around 30 of those, and then we made it public.
Like, clearly it saw some measure of success.
Well, I believe so, because again, GOG is a part of the publicly traded company, so everyone who wants to know the numbers can check how a small, tiny dream appeared to be a multi-million business. Not multi-billion, because still it's a niche thing, but multi-million for sure.
I'm sure that's more than what some thought it would be.
Absolutely, because again, I think GOG is making tens of millions of dollars every year. So yes, definitely, there is a niche, there is a need, and it just proves that, hey, we all have this nostalgia factor, and we all want to revisit certain things we liked in the past. Yes, sometimes they look differently, they play differently than what we remember, but still, it's great to have an opportunity to check it out.
Like, there are many reasons for that. I mean, we've talked to others about the preservation game, and sometimes it's not possible to preserve things 100%. It's like licensed stuff of various natures, whether it be music,
it licensed music, advertising in game, stuff like that.
And that has to be altered.
Certain things, yes, you're absolutely right. There are different complexities. And again, probably I'll just repeat what the guys told you in the past. So there are like cases where indeed, for example, the company get bankrupted. And in certain countries, for example, in France, when the company got bankrupted and nobody purchased the rights are getting back to original creators. Original creators, it can be tens of people. So in order for you to bring back one game, you need to sign agreements with these 20 people. 5 programmers, 3 artists, game designers, musicians. It's really interesting. In other cases, they just like the rights for the engine that, I don't know, died, or there is a company from a total industry who bought something through a series of mergers, and you just cannot find the rights for this engine. So you need to recreate this game from scratch in order to be able to play it. Or more complicated cases, like I think everyone dreams, no one lives forever, to be back to gamers one day. But that's probably one of the most complicated cases in this industry.
Well, probably also on that list is, we're getting to the point where some of the old devs from, the 90s and early 2000s may no longer be with us, and you need to track down their next of kin to get the rights at that point.
That's true. Sometimes you need to deal with estates. But again, it's worth fighting for. At least this is my belief.
I would agree with that assessment, since preserving the past is very important. And, it's like, especially given the precariousness of some of this stuff. I mean, at time of recording, just a few days ago, fan favorite game Spec Ops: The Line just vanished off of the digital storefronts due to what's suspected to be music rights issues. And, while this game is still preserved on physical media for the time being, it's like, unless you manage to get a download code or, like have had it beforehand. It's like the only way to get it off of digital storefronts is now getting a price gouged code.
Yeah, and they're now going for what, 3 or 4 times original price?
Thereabouts. I've heard like $130.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, hopefully at a certain point, publisher will take care of it, because again, there's always somebody who will be able to take care of it. But the problem is that for big publishers especially, it will not be a priority. So they're looking for multi-million things, while, well, let's say even such a successful game as Spec Ops: The Line might be bringing, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So again, it will be somewhere at the bottom of the list, unfortunately.
Yeah, it depends on the company and the property, and all that stuff. Because like in the case of Take-Two, if it's something by Rockstar, it's got better chances of being preserved. But even then, there's a whole bunch of stuff from Rockstar's PS2 days that really needs re-releasing.
Hell, are we still
to
waiting
play-
for another re-release of the original GTA?
Yes, actually, like that.
You see, I'm more hardcore. I would love to play Oni again.
Oni, yep. I'm like, Rockstar presents table tennis, the Manhunt series, help the Warriors. That one
Yeah,
would
I
be
know.
especially
Table tennis. The issue with that, I think, was music rights.
probably. I'm like, hell, Bully needs a re-release because, like, yeah, you can get that off of Steam, but have you ever played that version? It's not good.
Yeah.
Like, so, there are all sorts of things and issues. Some companies are much better about it, like Sega. Granted, that depends on the era, but it's like,
No, I think
Still-
Sega actually and Square Enix, they did quite a few things
yep,
to preserve these original games. Probably they didn't get proper remasters or remakes, but at least they tried to bring almost all of them back to gamers, which is already a cool thing to do.
yeah. Square Enix is doing a lot that I wouldn't expect, like digging up the Saga Frontier series, for example. Like, I am concerned about some recent statements, but that seems to be applying to new games.
Yeah.
At any rate, tell us how the journey has changed from like the initial days at GOG to the current times at SNEG.
Well, I think that's, again, all the low-hanging fruits were gathered. All the easiest cases, they were sorted out within the last, how many years passed? 15 years, over 15 years passed since that time. And more and more people were interested in this area. So the different publishers, like Steven with Night Dive, they're leaders here, and they're the most successful ones. But there was also Ziggurat guys, a few more. And actually, they're investing quite some time and efforts in trying to acquire all these old rights, dig them out of those digital graves and bring them back. So I think this is the biggest difference. It's hard. There are still lots of gems that we all are aware of, from No One Lives Forever to, I don't know, Black and White. You name them, Dune, Mech Warriors. But these are really hard cases to tackle, and they involve big publishers.
Yeah, some of them have come up on this program. Like we talked to Jordan Wiseman about Mech Warrior back when Shadowrun was getting revived, and he mentioned that the rights to Mech Warrior is split among like Tops and Microsoft.
Yes, and actually, like, probably cannot bring the names, but usually it's like, yes, either Microsoft and Atari, Microsoft and Activision.
Yeah.
And usually one part might be interested in bringing it back, but another party believes it's not a priority, and they don't want to bother. So we'll see. Hopefully one day somebody at the very top.
I mean, some of this stuff could be reordered given recent events. Like, I know, thanks to Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, there's a lot of hope that we can finally see the likes of Heretic and Hexen revive. Not just in, say, the classical sense, like, the old games. I know, like, most of those are on Steam, but, like, getting those remastered on consoles, etc., etc., and, like, getting Heretic 2 out of whatever purgatory was thrown in.
This will be great. But again, here I'm hoping for Steven to achieve certain things. He has experience working with the ID guys already.
Mm-hmm.
So those guys from Raven, they are close to them. They're part of the same family. And I hope that they will be able to kick it off earlier or later. They should.
I mean, once again, it's a whole knock on wood situation. I mean, but the paint hasn't even come off of the merger, so it might take some time. Who knows? Like,
again, usually I'm more pessimistic than others. Probably it's like my Eastern European origin. Because from one side, we have fantastic M&As that happened. In theory, quite a few rights were accumulated under one hand. But from another side, we see that our industry is going through very tough periods. With lots of layoffs, opportunities, and clear direction to saving money and cutting costs. Usually when such things are happening, so everything that is low priority is also being cut and being put to the shelf for years. Hope that's not going to be the case this time, but it might be, unfortunately.
Like, it's hard to say, like, but at the very least, there does seem to be a robust community of classic-minded publishers and developers out there.
And not only that, there's enough robust, freely available tools. It's not like they have to spend all the money to build it from the ground up. You could rebuild it for a fraction of what it was, especially compared to, relative sales.
And failing that, several of these developers have built their own engines.
Mm-hmm.
Night Dive has the Kex engine, Limited Run Games has the Carbon engine, and so Digital Eclipse has the Eclipse engine, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they can get these old titles rebuilt for far cheaper, at least nowadays, than 15, 20 years ago, where if you wanted a game rebuilt, it had to be rebuilt from scratch, and that was expensive.
Right. Like, also a lot more missing source code, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, in some cases that code is just gone.
Oh, yeah.
No, and again, I can tell, like, we were discussing game Cosmic the Rift, so the source code was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the only thing that we were able to do, reverse engineering the source code line by line, and then working on it, writing extra modules, changing the way certain elements work, because modern gamer will not understand it, and then the game can be released. But you're absolutely right again. I'm fully with you that a few developers created their own tools that are helping them to produce things faster and more efficient, like Hex Engine from Night Dive. Hope that we will be having engines for different types and different genres, not only for FPSs and let's see, super retro products. It will really help our lives easier.
Indeed, and another important paradigm to keep in mind is different platforms. I mean, that's where like Digital Eclipse comes in. Like what they did on Atari 50 was, they built like brand new emulators. Like they have built out of whole cloth the best Jaguar emulator that has ever existed.
And that probably wasn't a sentence you were hoping to say anytime, last ever.
No, but that exists now, and that's helping the overall community.
Yeah.
Because like the Jaguar is not an easy system to emulate.
Not only that, but Jaguars have not held up to the test of time physically.
Right, and not the only system that faces that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Saturn, very famously hard to code for, hard to emulate, and so on and so forth. And as far as I know, that nut hasn't exactly been cracked. Right. So.
Yeah, Sega has basically almost conceded to that and basically have given us the stuff to fix a lot of that, from what I've heard.
Well, it's like someone was on the verge of cracking it with like a game tap, but then game tap died.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I suppose that brings me to another question. How do you go about remastering it, like Chasm the Rift here? Like, how do you personally handle something like that?
Yeah, probably can partly repeat it. So Chasm the Rift, again, source code was lost, and despite the fact we are friends with the original creators, with the original dev studio working on it, they also didn't have any source code available. It was lost. Something in 90s, it's really hard to keep it. So again, we found a few guys from the community who were initiating work, just fans in their free time. They tried to reverse engineer the code. So we just asked for permission, partnered with them to continue the work, finish the work, fully reverse engineered it, and then gave it to the proper dev studio, modern dev studio that can adjust controls, cameras, but keeping the original feel of the game. And then again, porting it and bringing it to other platforms like Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and that's it. So let's say 1 year of work and you have it. I think that's like one option. Second option was like Blade of Darkness, Severance Blade of Darkness, because it depends on the country. It had a different name. It's an RPG that was released prior to Dark Souls, but had interesting game mechanics there that some of gamers believe that Souls genre was actually inspired by Blade of Darkness. I don't believe in this because I just believe that people had similar ideas. But if you like Souls type of games, highly recommend that you check it out. So again, this game also got lost. Source code was never to be found. We talked to probably 15 people from the original dev team and managed to find not the final source code, but something that was like on their hands 3 weeks prior to release. And then we managed to get source code for Xbox version that was never released, but they started working on it after the release of the PC version. And then compiling those two source codes, we tried and actually we managed to make the game run. And then again, we had lots of original developers consulting us, sharing what actually they had in mind, sharing certain memories, notes that they had from the time, what they were tweaking during the last weeks of development to ensure actually we can get there. And then lots of testing, and then again, going to release of the game as well on all the platforms, not only on PC, but on consoles as well.
And was there any sort of difficulty bringing Chasm the Rift to modern day consoles?
I think if you have an experienced team, it's not a problem nowadays. There are lots of talented engineers, passionate about old games. And again, this is the biggest difference from us 15 years ago and now. We went through so many iterations. We brought back so many classics that there are quite a few studios that they know how to do this. And if you know how to bring back Duke Nukem without source code, you might find a way to bring another shooter as well.
That is a fair point. Like, now another thing I'm wondering about is, well, the PC centric nature of a lot of the games that you handle. Like, has there been any discussion of, say, for example, bringing the old AD&D Gold Box games to console?
Well, there were quite a few discussions about it, including Digital Eclipse guys. But again, this is a tough case because from one side, we've purchased the rights for the code for design, but again, the IP rights holder is Wizards, right? It's D&D. So again, that's what we were saying. Like, if Wizards are open for it, we're happy to support any dev studio that can handle it. On our side, we thought Digital Eclipse can be the best one because, again, they have tools to bring such old games to different platforms. Hopefully, one day, maybe, they will find agreement with Wizards and it will work out. No, but from our side, obviously, we were thinking a lot about it. For us, for many games, PC is just like a testing ground, trying to understand if there is an interest from the gaming community in it right now. Because, again, as much as we love preservation and we're happy to work in zero, we don't need to make huge profits out of it. Sometimes we don't need profits at all. But obviously, we don't want to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in something that nobody wants. Right. So yes, we're using PC as a testing ground, and if some games are proving that, hey, there is interest now, or let's say they have a potential, yes, trust me, we are investing in it and slowly trying to do something.
That makes sense. I mean, given, like, how big is your operation now? Like, how many people work at SNEG?
Generally, again, we have 3 persons working full-time, that are solely working at SNEG, and we have lots of partners whom we've started working back to our good old games, GOG times, and they're supporting us, because again, every game is a different, and sometimes you need people who know Delphi. Yes, some games were written in this language. And some people don't even know that such language exists. And some games require talent of, I don't know, C sharp people. Others require just reverse engineers. So again, we don't have hundreds of people. We just have a huge network of small teams or individuals that are jumping on the project, depending on the complexity and setup of the project. So more or less, we're compiling the team for each game we bring back.
Makes sense. And so what have you been working on recently?
Recently, something that I don't want to reveal right now, because it's a very interesting project. I will just tell you that we have a few big projects in the works. One is exactly one of the most complicated cases of this industry, where the rights are split between 4 or 5 parties. Yes, so crossing fingers that we will finalize and bring back 2 last remaining pieces this year. And another one, we decided to experiment, and we had one game that we were partly, I mean, we as directors of SNEG, one game that we participated in development long time ago, but this game was never released. Never. So it was abandoned and dropped at the very last moment of the development cycle. And we'll try to bring it back.
We certainly look forward to those endeavors should they become public. Like, I suppose on the reverse side of the coin, in a manner of speaking, is what have you released recently that you can actually talk about?
Well, what we released, I think that the last release that we made last year was a huge batch of classic SSI titles. that we will brought back. It's like from Great Naval Battles simulators. Again, if somebody is a huge fan of naval battles, definitely. I think from that time there was nothing better released. We released the Wargame Construction set. It's a super old gaming series. Maybe some of you know Age of Rifles. Because again, from the design side, I think it's like one of the most praised strategy games. And again, if you like those, definitely play it because there are lots of scenarios there that simulate real battles, real wars, where you can play for both sides, and it simulates it really well. So for those who are into this, definitely check it out. Also, as the part of the package, we released the Fantasy series. Again, this is like very old RPG that I mentioned that most likely partly inspired Surtech for the Wizardry series. And a few more, but again, these are classics. So this is just pure classics that we acquired the rights some time ago, and we were working with the original creator of DOSBox to change the DOSBox wrapper emulator for these specific games to ensure their best performance.
I mean, that's good. I mean, especially since we have covered some classic games that have had, let's say, rather dodgy DOSBox support.
Well, this is a beauty because again, also the guy who created DOSBox, let's say one of two creators, original one, because one is not in the business anymore. So the second guy, we are friends for many years, and we are really changing the way his wrapper works, almost in a custom way for every game, and he does a great job here.
It's good to know.
Because unfortunately, not each game is working under the most recent DOSBox games out of the blue.
Compatibility is always going to be an issue on PCs. Just the nature of the beast.
Yes.
So I do have to ask this question, but I'm not sure how much you can talk about it. And that is, can you tell us about some of the ones that got away? Some of the titles that you actively pursued and you just slipped through the fingers through one reason or another.
One of my mottos is never give up. I cannot say that something just disappeared. I know that certain games they're blocked for many years and sometimes for private reasons. So there was like Heavy Metal Fuck. I don't know if you know this game, but in my opinion, it will never be re-released.
Yeah.
Because the rights are split between too many people. I think I know each of them, but due to certain life changes, most likely it will never happen.
I think Kiss Psycho Circus is also up there.
Yes. But that one has a different story.
I'm sure it does. But, it's like the overall story of a lot of these games is pretty similar in the basics. It's like one or more rights holders isn't able or willing to give up the ghost, so to speak.
Yes, and sometimes they're ready, sometimes for private reasons they don't want to bring these memories back. And I think this is the toughest one. Because in the cases where just like it's a business decision for now, you always have a hope that it will change earlier or later. Or maybe some of us will make tens of millions and just for fun, we'll bring it back. Not for fun, but just for the fact that we love these games.
Right.
You never know. But again, there are still certain cases that like totally dropped, again, as mentioned, private reason, and that's it, because certain things are just blocked, and there is no point in pursuing them.
True. I mean, once again, we've had, like Steven has told us, a few ones that got away that weren't No One Lives Forever, like the Cyberseed games. He actively tried to pursue those, and that got closed off.
Cyberseed, they're also interesting. Again, I don't know what exactly Steve said, but again, was also doing the same thing as he did, probably. But it's just a matter of that the person cannot be found.
Well,
This person cannot be found anywhere, and apart from the Giger, there are other rights that you just cannot find.
Yeah, I'm like, well, what he told us was it was the Giger stuff that really closed off the discussions there, because he had died, and that did something with the rights. So
it's just like huge. I will try to simplify. Just the royalties that you need to pay there, they're just ridiculous.
Right.
You will never be able to release it. But to the best of my knowledge, they're also like part of the rights that they're just owned by the person who disappeared totally from any raider.
Well, I suppose that begs another question. Have you ever had to go to an island to rescue a game?
It's a good
That's
question.
a deep cut, Adam. Jesus.
Well, I mean, if I had a nickel for every time that story's been a story like that has been mentioned on the show, I would have 2 nickels. That's not a lot, but it's unusual that it's happened more than once, right?
Indeed.
Like,
nothing that comes to my mind.
I'm like, well, I'm not sure if that's fortunate or not. Like, but anyway, I mean, we could go on and on about this all day, I'm sure, but
Absolutely.
unfortunately, our time has drawn mostly to a close. So, Penny, is there anything further you wish to ask Oleg at this point?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, and unfortunately, Galix had to step away. You know, the day job calls. Like, Oleg, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today. It was an excellent conversation. I always enjoy being able to talk about games preservation on the program. And I hope you'll be able to come back when your next projects are ready to be talked about.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me here, gents. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, no problem. Anyway, you can find the SNEG catalog on Steam, GOG. A few of their games have made it to the likes of the Switch and the PlayStation 5. So if you're interested in some classics, go ahead and pick up some of them today. Anyway, and also, if you enjoyed this interview, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when we go live next. And yeah, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to join us next time for our Sunday review session. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.